Hello everybody! I'd like to say good to see you all, but well, I guess you can see me, but I can't see you. Today Cedric and I are in the forest. We want to do some woodland photography, but I will use a different approach than you might have seen from other photographers, because today I will use a shallow depth of field.
A shallow depth of field? You mean no sharpness from front to back? The one thing you're preaching since the beginning of the channel? Oh my God!
In landscape photography, you many times want to have total sharpness, so sharpness from the beginning of the picture to its end, especially when the foreground and even the midground are equally important as the background. So let me quickly show you some examples. In this example here, the big rock at the beginning of the scene should be equally sharp than the background of the scene, with the beginning of the waterfall and the rocks in the background, and in general also the midground. Everything should be sharp in this picture. Here, the reed is the foreground interest, but the mountains in the background, they are the actual stars of this image. So you need again total sharpness from the very front to the very back. And in this picture you see the big piece of wood in the front as a foreground interest. It's important to be sharp, as well as the waterfall in the background and the rocks. Everything must be sharp in this image. But when you only have one subject in your picture, it's very important that it's properly isolated from the rest of the picture. For example, in portrait photography. But when you do woodland photography, it's really difficult to isolate your subject from the background, because the background is usually trees, and they form a very chaotic background. There's too much going on in the picture, so the viewer's attention is totally distracted from the subject that you want to present. And as a result, your picture is one thing: boring. But actually, there are some experts that are able to isolate their subjects even in such chaotic background environments like the forest. So have a look, for example, at accounts of Simon Baxter, or to a certain extent also Nigel Denson. They are real masters. They're masters of isolating their subjects in the forest. It's unbelievable. But be warned, what they do requires skill, time, and dedication. If you watch the videos, you will realize one thing. They don't just go there and take one picture and that's it. No, they visit the same scene over and over again until they have the right conditions and they found the right angle to put their subjects into the scene. With perfect isolation, great composition, and still keeping a deep depth of field with sharpness from front to back. This is real mastery. By the way, when it comes to conditions, fog is the best condition you can have, because it just eliminates your background and you can really nicely isolate your subject. And that reminds me, I have to ask Simon Baxter if I can borrow his fog machine, because he always seems to have fog anywhere he goes. And if I look at such real masters like Simon Baxter or Nigel Denson, if I see what kind of time and dedication they put into their woodland photography, I have to admit, I'm not such a guy. So I have to use a different approach, and that I will show you today, because I will do woodland photography using a shallow depth of field. So I picked this fern as my subject, but if I photograph this with a small aperture and a big depth of field, it will not be isolated from its background. Let me show you that real quick. So what I will do now is I open my aperture to its widest, which is f4 for this lens, and I will repeat the picture with the same composition and the same focal point. And then you will see that the background is much more blurred and the fern pops out of the picture compared to the first one. So let's take the picture. As you see in the second picture, the background is blurry, but the fern is clearly the subject of the scene. This is what I wanted to achieve. By the way, also the foreground is blurry now, which I accept for the purpose to make clear what is the subject. And I have eliminated by this the distractions for the viewer to easily understand, okay, this picture is about the fern. It's not about the scene of the forest where there also happens to be a fern. No, I photographed the fern. So that was the fern. Let me show you some other pictures using the same technique. The rain got heavier. I'm just happy that the Z6 is so nicely weather sealed. I think woodland photography is the most difficult area of landscape photography, and I really admire masters like Simon Baxter or Nigel Denson, who put a lot of time, effort and dedication into their pictures. But honestly speaking, that's nothing for me. I don't have that patience. I will continue to shoot mountains and lakes, rivers and rocks, waterfalls and no trees. That's what I'm going to do. What do you think about woodland photography? Do you like it? Do you like to look at the pictures? Do you even do it yourself? Do you agree with me that this is the most difficult part of landscape photography? Well, just tell me in the comments. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. If so, give me a like. If you don't want to miss any of my videos, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you have already, thank you very much for it. It means a lot to me. And if you have any questions or you want to see certain videos, make sure you tell me that in the comments. I'm more than happy to answer all of your comments. I wish you all the best, and I hope I see you all next time. But I will use a different approach than you might have. Nochmal, one more time. You mean no sharpness from front to back? The one thing that you practice. One more time. In landscape photography. One more time. In landscape photography, many times you want to have sharpness from the front of the picture to its end. One more time. But the actual stars of the image. One more time. But when you have only a single subject in your... One more time. So, for example, in portrait. One more time. Hey. But when you have nochmal. It's very important that it's properly isolated from the rest of the picture. So the background should... hey. Especially, for example, one more time, hey, ich krieg's nicht auf die Reihe. There are some experts, however, that manage to isolate their subjects even in such chaotic environments like the forest. And one more time. One more time. And one more time. Also, the foreground is blurrier. No, nochmal. Because I want to make my point here. Hey. And the first version of the picture with the deep depth, nochmal. Let me show you some other hey. Let me show you some other pictures. One more time. To the channel if you haven't already. One more time. By the way, regarding conditions, if you do woodland photography, fog is the best condition you can have because it just blurs out your background. Oh, what's the dog doing here? And okay. The dog killed the scene.